to click OK.
Hey there. Is your team prepared to defend against advanced cyber attacks, or do they know where the attacks will come from, or how to identify real vulnerabilities? Better yet, do they have the hands-on experience for defending against an attacker to get the confidence in their ability to respond? We're going to dive into that and more in today's Thursday ThreatCast. Welcome back to the Thursday ThreatCast from SimSpace. I'm Chris Michaels, and today we're going to be talking about how to truly validate your ability to respond to cyber events, and moreover, how you can have confidence in your security technology, processes, and overall team readiness. To give us additional expert insights, though, we brought in some friends over at Mandiant to share a bit about how to develop the necessary incident response skills. Joining us today is Nadine Tanner, who is hit the right button, there we go, who is a senior manager with Mandiant and also leads the Mandiant ThreatSpace cyber range experience. Nadine, welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. We are glad to have you. For those of us who, well, those of us know you, but many of the people out there watching right now may not know you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh, they don't know me? Well, I've been in IT for quite a while, since my hair was dark. So I started playing with computers in the mid 80s. You know, I remember my very first computer was a TRS-80 in high school, and they always made sense. I liked the binary, the ones and the zeros. It was absolute. And my journey has been in my career has been a journey of, I think I can do that, or that interests me, which I think everybody, you know, to a certain extent should really enjoy what they do. And that's kind of what brought me to, you know, where I am today in running the cyber range here at Mandiant.
And you've worked for a range of companies from Fortune 50s and then to DoD. And along the way, you've even written a book.
4 books.
4 books?
Wow. Yeah, the latest one.
Shows you how good my research is.
Yeah. Well, just go to Amazon. You got to spell my name right. But yeah, it again was a series of, I think I could do that. I had taught a class in Canada and was coming back through an international gateway, of course, and had put my backpack on the conveyor belt, and the guy behind me put his backpack on top of mine. Well, you know, my first thought is cloner. So I kind of bumped his backpack a little bit, and when it rolled over, it said Wiley. And I had been teaching for the DoD for many years, you know, A+, Net+, Security+, CASP, CISSP. So I've been teaching for the Wiley curriculum for many, many moons. And long story short, the publisher called me and said, you know, would you write a book on Metasploit? And I was working at Rapid7 at the time. And, you know, I had sat across the table from, you know, James Lee. Mm-hmm. I'm not writing that book. I know who should write that book. And, you know, I have David Kennedy's book, you know, on my bookshelf. But then they came back again and said, would you write? And it's like, well, what do you want me to write about? And they said, write what you needed 20 years ago when you were starting out. So I really had the opportunity to pick the subject matter for each chapter. It was those tools that, again, some of them we use in the range, like Nmap and Wireshark and Burp Suite and all those fun things, and Kali Linux, if you're going to be the red teamer. So I wrote about those tools that I had fallen in love with and how to use them and where to find them, and not just that theoretical. And again, I think that's what brought me to the range. It's the download it here. This is how you install it. This is how you use it. This is what you should see. This is why you're using it, not just that theoretical, very high level. This is what you use this for. So.
Right. And one of those is the Blue Team Toolkit, right? So
Yes.
giving everyone all the tools necessary of how to arm their teams, make sure that they know how to threaten, know how to utilize all the things that you'd see from, like, this is how somebody's going to attack you, right?
Well, to a certain extent, there are a couple of chapters that target and talk about how to use Metasploit, how to use Kali Linux. But it was like any knife, you can chop your onions or you could kill somebody with it. So, it's the same thing in cyber. A lot of the tools that are out there today can be used for good, but they could also be used for evil.
Right. Well, along those lines, a lot of organizations, whether it be Fortune 50s, the DoD, everyone, it seems like so many people are putting emphasis on point products and buying the next tool or the next thing to kind of fill a gap or check a box. In doing so, do you think that organizations broadly are really prepared for the types of threats that they're facing today?
Some are. Some are. I have seen over the past 2 years in working the cyber range, and I think one of the beautiful things of what I'm doing today is I get to actually see the expertise of those teams.
Mhm.
In fact, one of the teams I did most recently asked, "How do I compare to?" And on a scale of 1 to 5, they were 4s and 5s. They were amazing, and you could see them improve over the engagement
Mhm.
of the ThreatSpace, which is what we offer at Mandiant, our cyber range engagement. And so it's really interesting, the people who think they're prepared and then you throw something at them and they're not. So that's what we come in and do as coaches. We tell them, this is what you should be doing. This is what you should be looking for. This is how you go about looking for it. And it's not just that click here, point here, click here that a lot of products do. Because I've done product training, many, many years of product training. It's really more of that all-encompassing thought process, those critical thinking skills. And one of the things that I think I've seen trending more so of anything else over the past 6 to 8 months is that immediately jump to conclusions, and you can't do that. You have to let the evidence prove itself. And so when somebody will take something that in fact, one of our ThreatSpace engagements, one of the customers asked us to inject something into the scenario that was a distraction. In fact, it was somebody couldn't reach a network share and they put in a ticket. Well, everybody assumed it was a breach, and they started looking for the IOCs. They started looking at the timeline, started looking at that individual, and he had actually come back from paternity leave, which they had the same type of GPO and the same type of processes and procedures that if a computer didn't touch the domain over 2 weeks, it was kicked off. So you actually had to physically bring the machine in to rejoin the domain. And so it was really interesting that they wanted to specifically test them on their critical thinking.
So aside from the critical thinking, when you go to an organization in a threat space engagement, what are some of the common mistakes you see in either the posture, their broad cybersecurity posture, or the team itself?
Well, there's several things that we specifically look for. So it's not just me coming into the range. I bring an IR consultant as a coach who has years and years of experience. It really could be somebody who actually worked the latest oil and gas breach, and we're teaching an oil and gas company. It could be somebody who was just hit by a supply chain, and I've got an IR consultant who just did that. We bring in an Intel consultant who, again, is extremely well versed on the latest and greatest APTs and threat models and threat actors and what they're doing and what type of ransomware and what they should be looking for next. And then I also bring in a red teamer, and those are the ones who are extremely well versed in how to exploit the environment. And I think what ends up happening is all of us come together and we're looking for specific things. We're looking for how do they even use intelligence in their threat hunt. We look for how they communicate with one another. And one of the issues there is a lot of people will close hold. Again, I've been around the block a couple of times. I've been in IT over 25 years now. There are some personality types in our industry that want to solve the problem all by themselves and come in as the hero. And you can't do that. You just can't do that. Everybody has an area of expertise. And I'm not an IR, that's not my gig. I've watched people do it. It's poetry in motion when you're watching somebody do it well. Same thing with the red teamer. Oh my gosh, it is just fascinating to watch somebody do that. I've taken the OSCP class. I didn't pass the test. I only tried once, and they say try harder, but life got in the way. But it is absolutely amazing to watch those with certain skill sets. So you have to communicate with your team, and you have to really know what their specialties are, whether it be malware analysis or whether it be network traffic. And I've got somebody on my team, Jess, who is amazing at Snort. I'm going to put her in that seat. So you have to know what the strengths are of your team, and people don't utilize the strengths. They want to close hold that.
Well, it seems like there's one of the issues that we're seeing is cybersecurity staffing, with the giant job shortage, is that so many people are now having to wear too many hats too, right? So in your overall kind of assessments or looking at it, sometimes are those recommendations, hey, you really need somebody to do this person's doing three jobs, you need more people, or is it getting, in terms of the consolidation, is it the other side? We really need to train this person because they're having to do something and they don't have that knowledge. Is it kind of a twofold, double-edged sword in that?
It's C, all of the above. So I think that is one of the industry problems that we have in production, is that we are short-staffed. Our cup overfloweth. There's so much that people have to do. I've been in teams where it's a large organization, but their head count is low, and it's very difficult to find people with the threat hunting skill set. And so organizations have to be able to see the value in training their individuals. There's some organizations that don't want to train them and then have them leave. But the trick is to find that nice balance of training them to be the best they can be and making the organization as rich as possible and making them want to stay. And it's just a very nice balance when you can make that work.
For sure. Well, we've talked a little bit and teased a little bit about ThreatSpace. We do have a quick video I want to pull up for us to tease us a little bit more, and then we'll jump right into really diving into what the ThreatSpace engagement looks like.
Cool.
And welcome back to the ThreatCast. Again, we're talking to Nadine Tanner of Mandiant to discuss the ThreatSpace cyber range experience. And by the way, if you're looking to boost your team's IR skills with live fire events or going through the entire exercises that ThreatSpace offers, be sure to put TS in the comment section. Our teams will be sure to reach out to you and get you in touch with the right people. Also, if you have questions as we go along, specific threats or things that your teams are facing, be sure to put those in the questions section. We'll be sure to answer as many questions as we have down at the end. So with that, Nadine, let's talk about ThreatSpace. What is the service broadly, and how do we start an engagement?
You find me. You can reach out to me and I'll make it happen. ThreatSpace was born several years ago with a company called iSight, and Mandiant FireEye acquired iSight. and it became a on-prem experience. I liken it to teaching CISSP. I've done that for many, many years. And we can theoretically talk about encryption. We can theoretically talk about access management. We can talk about what it really feels like to threat hunt. But until you're actually immersed in it, until you experience it, until you have those endorphins and your heart's pounding and you're starting to sweat just a little bit because you know you're about to give a debrief in a little bit to a C-suite, and you have to answer those questions about how this breach has actually affected your organization and what you should be doing operationally, and they start asking those hard questions, it's just amazing to put somebody through their paces. It's also a little bit of gamification, because what you start doing is you put all of your skill set into motion when we're doing our engagement. So it started on-prem, and of course, everybody knows what happened about 2 years ago, and that's when I onboarded. I had experience with building ranges. I'm a bit of a Jane of all trades. I know a lot about a lot, but I don't know, very specifically about just one or two things. So they brought me on to build the range, and the range that they had used in the past had disappeared. So we couldn't find the rack in the stack, and then nobody had snapshots, and it was like, oh, because things had gotten put on hold.
Right.
And so that's when I reached out. I started looking at many different vendors for cyber ranges, and again, I built them, and I had my favorites, and one of them was no longer on the market. So reached out to you guys, saw the demo, and it was just like, oh wow, okay, yeah, done, sold. And so we started developing different scenarios. We started delivering education collateral, because it's not just put you through your paces. We start looking, when you're teaching, you see that 11 between people's eyes, and I've got one, so there it is. They're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing next. We don't want them lost. We want somebody to walk out of ThreatSpace and going, I got it. I got it. I understand what I'm supposed to be doing, when I'm supposed to be doing it. I understand what the strike zone is. And so we put you through your paces. I like to talk to management in detail in the very beginning about what keeps you up at night. I think any cybersecurity professional should ask their boss that question. And whether it be an APT, whether it be a specific piece of malware, whether it be, AD misconfiguration, which is like one of the most major things that we're seeing now, or even phishing. I think phishing is like in the top 4. If you read the RIM Trends report that we have out, that came out just a little while ago, I think it was the 13th edition. It covers October 2020 to December of 2021. So it talks about, ransomware specific data, whatever it is that keeps you awake at night, we can put that in the range. And we can throw those IOCs in there. I can actually go to a specific department that we have here at Mandiant and say, hey, do you have a copy of Beacon? Do you have a copy of, and they can give me the actual malware. It's been sanitized, so it's only going to beacon out to me. So I can put you through your paces, and then you can take the malware and, rip it open with the RIM and UX box if you have that skill set. So we can do everything from the actual malware analysis to the network traffic analysis to the looking for the IOCs within your range. And it's a really, really great experience. So again, you pull people in with a specific skill set, and they get to kind of test to see how well they are. And it's not a capture the flag. It's not a competition. You're coming in as a team. Some organizations, especially not the 3-letter ones, but some organizations will actually share their policies and procedures. And then some of our recommendations have even been, to assist them with writing their ransomware playbook, or helping and assisting them with their policies and procedures, which is another place where we come in as subject matter experts. We know what you're supposed to be doing next, and we can help you, negotiate, the best practices there.
And part of it also being that it's in a virtual cyber range, this gives people two things. One, the fidelity of being able to practice on something, but 2, it's consequence free, right? They don't have to worry about accidentally kicking over a production system.
Right. But which could be an issue if somebody decided they wanted to take my malware and deploy it in their system. No, most definitely. It is a very secure environment. And I did this not too terribly long ago. In fact, in December of last year, for a cybersecurity company. And that was one of their concerns. And we put them through their paces. In fact, on day 3 of the engagement, we got a standing ovation. But they were very, very happy. They had never seen a range like yours, and they were very happy with our engagement. In fact, they've come back this year for 2 more.
Very cool. Well, question that I would have is, how then would you adapt the skills or the needs for each customer and I think that might be twofold, and I'll let you. I said I wouldn't have multi-part questions, but there's two parts to that. One would be industry specific, or the other would be maturation. So how mature the security organization is. How would you address either one of those? So if I have an O&G customer, you talked earlier, you'd bring somebody in who might have worked on, say, Colonial Pipeline or one of those. But if it was industry specific for range, how do we adjust that for particular ranges?
Well, I think a lot of that conversation that I have with the customer in the very beginning is beneficial. There are a lot of questions that they don't want to ask, of course, because they are a security organization or they're very concerned about their security posture. In cyber, nobody wants to admit that they're not the best of the best. Nobody wants to say that they installed something when they really did. It's that kind of mentality. But I think it kind of boils down to almost like a philosophical type of question. When it comes to ThreatSpace, we can be incredibly flexible. So not only do we have live instructors, there's again 4 of us. There's an Intel instructor, an IR instructor, myself as facilitator, making sure everything's working in the background, communicating, with my range engineers on your side. But we also have that red teamer, and we're all watching and we're listening. And unless we don't have a native speaker, which we've done this in Italy, we've done this in Spain, we've done this in Israel. So sometimes, if they're speaking Hebrew, I had 4 years of Latin in high school. It does mean no good. So we're listening and we're watching. And so on day 1, we can usually pinpoint maturation. We figure out what it is that they do best. They've already chosen their scenario, so those are the ones we're going to run, but we can choose whether to be more obfuscated than others. There's some organizations that came in and bless their heart. I'm from the South, born and raised in Louisiana. On day 1, asked me what port 53 was. And that's one of those that you go, all right, we got to scale this back. We had one organization that wanted us to target their AD because they had read M-Trends and they knew that that's a huge target. And somebody asked what a forest was. So I was like, all right, we need to scale this back. So we have that flexibility as instructors. And of course, me as an educator for many years, I kind of can pick where you are, and then I know where to step back and then bring you back up to speed. We also level set quite a bit. There's usually more experience on the team, and then you have more junior analysts, and we try to pull them in to be mentors of the younger. What would we be doing? What do your procedures and policies say you should be doing at this point in time? And then we also have the ability to ratchet up the range. So not only can the red teamer obfuscate or be a little more noisy if he needs to be, we have the ability to make the range extremely flexible. So again, going back to that philosophical question, are you testing a skill set or are you testing a product? And that's 2 different philosophies. We can throw a product in there and then you use the toolkit that you're used to, and then boom, you're done. Well, it requires quite a bit more thinking and analyzing if you're using something that, you've not touched before. Maybe you've never played with NetWitness. Maybe you've never played with Splunk or Security Onion or Kibana. And those are usually the tools that we use. So if you're used to a different SIM, then absolutely it's going to be a different environment, but the thought process is the same. The query is going to be very much alike. A Boolean is a Boolean is a Boolean. And I probably should put that on a bumper sticker. That was kind of cool. Or maybe anyway, we can make the range more complicated. We can make, throw in more firewalls and switches and subnets. We know how to ratchet up the education collateral or bring it back down based on day 1. And we like using the insider threat. So one of the members of our team here at Mandiant is John Ford, who is, world renowned for his ability to negotiate and, his experience with different 3-letter agencies. And so having him on my side with building the insider threat scenario. And I like doing that on day 1 because you're not necessarily worried about the perimeter as much. We're able to really drill into procedures. What would happen to this individual if they're doing XYZ on your network? Is it somebody who's disgruntled? And we talk about what to look for, and we talk about those things that an insider threat has access to, as opposed to, and then the history of what have we seen in the wild. And so we like to use that one on day 1. But day 2, it can be DC, it could be exfiltration, it could be all sorts of kind of ransomware. We can do all kinds of things in the range because again, it's extremely flexible. And so again, going back to that cybersecurity company that we did last year, they were so good that normally we only do 3 scenarios, and what takes an average company 2 hours to get through took them 20 minutes. And it was like, Whew, all right, Ryan, it was my red teamer at the time. It's like, you need to be a little bit more stealthy there. And so we ended up going through a couple of extra scenarios just to
Right.
have something to do. And then by day 3, in the last 30 minutes, we had given hints. We tried to show them the door. And finally, they threw up their hands. They're like, call Mandiant. We can't find them. And so, yeah, it was really fun to watch that one. And they were like, oh my gosh, if I just thought about. So again, it's those light
Thought
bulbs going
process,
out off
right?
that we love to watch.
Yeah. So, I remember you because you told that story when you came and visited us at our offices in Feb. I believe that group also, and they may have also wanted to know specifically how to defend against a particular APT, right? So
Right,
either an
right.
Iranian or a specific, threat nation state group.
Exactly, exactly. So what we ended up doing for this specific organization, because of who they are and what they own and what they build and what they protect, there is a specific APT group that we went through, Mandiant Advantage. If you don't have a subscription, you would probably absolutely love it. It is an amazing tool for intelligence gathering. It has a very colorful tone to it in that it shows you not just the latest and greatest threat intel, but it also shows you who is doing what where. There's news feeds. You have the most active vulnerabilities on one side. You have the most active malware, and then you click on the malware and it drills in. It tells you all about it, where to find it, who's using it. And so what we did was a little bit of recon on our side because of, again, who they are and what they do. And there was a specific APT out of Iran that's targeting them, and we were able to grab that malware and use it in our range. Then they got to threat hunt against it. So it was really exciting for them, and that was, again, the standing ovation at the very end. They're like, "Yeah, that was cool. That was cool." So again, it not only builds their skill set and their confidence, but they also get that experience. And until you've held your breath underwater, I can tell you what it feels like. But yeah.
So you mentioned Mandiant Advantage and actually a lot of the threat intelligence based scenarios that you can create. I think broadly a question that a lot of people might ask is, should organizations be more worried about APT groups, state actors? You mentioned inside threat being the first one that you want to knock off the bat, but are there particular types of scenarios that you see being requested more often, or that you think that might be overlooked?
I think our most popular scenario right now is ransomware via phishing. And
Okay.
we can get so granular that we can fish with PDF, we can fish with an executable. Again, we can emulate a lot of those APTs depending on the company's vertical. So if they're in banking, healthcare, manufacturing, whatever it is, I'll use Mandiant Advantage, log in and do some, again, some recon on their organization, their type of organization, and where they're located. That's another variable, and who might be targeting them. And so I'll go in and try to find out as much as what their current posture is, and that's what my intelligence coach helps me with a great deal of the time. There's like, oh yeah, that we're seeing that quite a bit. But I would say AD misconfiguration is one of the other big ones that people want us to play with, as well as different variations of ransomware, and they want us to emulate fin 11. Fin 11's all over the place,
Yeah.
and so I could do just about anything and say I'm fin 11. They've got such a repertoire of malware, and they
Right.
target everything from aerospace to hotel chains to grocery stores and supply chains. So I could just say everybody's fin 11, but yeah, you can get very specific of different groups, and we see APT 29 quite a bit. People
Mhm.
ask, threat hunt against that one. So, yep, I'll just go to Mandiant Advantage and look up who's doing what to whom and say, yeah, we can emulate that.
Well, I think one of the key differences also between what ThreatSpace offers and a BAS, right, is you're able to have more of that tailoring of some of the TTPs and things for your particular industry versus just running a pre-built
Oh,
scenario
absolutely.
automation, right?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty. You can get foundational knowledge from, those type of engagements, but we're like the icing on the cake. There's so much to having someone who has actually worked those IRs
Mhm.
telling you this is what you should be doing. And I guess when we're doing our threat space, that's my absolute favorite time. So normally threat space is over 3 days. We can be flexible. Again, we've got some organizations, we did 2 back-to-back for a bank overseas in EMEA. And they could not leave, of course, their SOC unmanned. So not everybody could attend. So what we ended up doing was a 5-day engagement. So I had Team Alpha in the morning, Team Bravo in the afternoon, and they did an actual handoff, a debrief of each team. Like it was the end of day in the next,
The shift change.
yes, shift change, exactly. And so with bringing them in and being able to do that type of recon, we knew what they wanted to threat hunt against.
Mhm.
And so that flexibility was incredibly important for them. And so at the end of our debrief, or I should say, they give a debrief to us. And there are at times some organizations will bring in a C-suite, a CISO, a CEO, or a CFO to actually ask those questions. Some people will bring in legal or public relations. But the very, very end, I usually have, I have a favorite red teamer. I probably should admit that. I'm being recorded, aren't I? But I'll have him or her come in at the end and do a debrief of this is what I did. This is how I did it. This is, where I did it. And this is how you keep me out in the future. And then it opens almost like a tabletop exercise where they start drilling in questions of, where have you seen this and how do you do this? And it's really kind of cool to see that relationship being built.
Right.
And yeah, so that's my favorite debrief of the entire engagement.
Yeah. So we're blending almost the TTX analysis versus just the in range response, right?
I've heard it called a tabletop on steroids.
or at least creatine, because steroids are banned.
That's true. That's true.
Well, we have somebody in the comments here that says they're going to patent the bullying quote before you can make it into a bumper sticker. So it's going to be a race to the printers before that can happen. Yeah, we talked about this being in range. Can somebody use the same exact tools in a regular threat hunting or incident response in range? Is it fully available? All the Linux and software and or even systems, emulated and simulated systems?
Again, that all goes back to that initial conversation with the customer. And again, asking them what keeps them up at night, what type of range do you want to threat hunt in, how much do you want to emulate your own range. And so again, we have a list, and you as SimSpace can throw up that huge list of all the vendors that you have access to and educational licenses for, and those relationships that are very strong within your organization. That we've had people ask for Nexpos, we've had people ask for Nessus, we've had people ask for Proofpoint, we had Office 365, Sentinel-1, which Mandiant has a relationship with. Splunk is a big one, and that one is in the default range that we use. So we do have an out-of-the-box range that I can pull out of the shelf, and on your side, Craig, Colin, Paul can have deployed within about 30 minutes, and we know our scenarios, so we can run them over and over again. It's that customization that takes a little bit of time. So we end up, again, having that flexibility that not a lot of other organizations have.
Well, it's also nice, being consequence free. We talked about earlier, where you can go through and blow it up, right?
Right.
And
We've had that happen.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing to me. One of the things that we do in the very, very beginning is, I'm a huge proponent of data privacy. And so I tried to make this as, how should I say this, as GDPR friendly as possible. So I don't want the organization's email addresses. I'm going to assign you an email address, and you're going to log in with that, and you're going to change your password. It is amazing to me, even cybersecurity professionals with 10, 15, 20 years of experience forget their password in 5 minutes. And it's like, people, really? And so they have to reset their passwords quite a bit. But yeah, the ability to bring in different vendors so you can use your own toolkit. It just means that you're not exactly, it's a different testing methodology, if you will. But we still have education collateral that we bring into the range, where we'll talk about persistence, we'll talk about lateral movement on those Windows boxes, the Linux boxes. We brought in, yeah, we had one customer, and the only instructions I got from them was make it more Linuxy. That was it. Didn't give me a scenario, didn't give me a topology, didn't ask, make it more Linuxy. It's like, okay, so we added, some Red Hat and CentOS and some RIM NUX boxes and some Ubuntu, and I'd have thrown in some Mint if they'd let me. But yeah, we made it as Linuxy as possible, and then they never touched the RIM NUX boxes. So I was like, yeah, thank you. But yeah, here at Mandiant, our education department, we've got public and private classes. So some organizations will come in and take the Windows class or the Linux, enterprise incident response class or the malware analysis class, and then they'll use us almost like a capstone, putting into motion all of the things that they've learned, throughout all our courseware. Our course catalog is pretty massive. Our Intel courses are amazing. We have the SMEs come in and help develop the content itself. And then we have consultants actually teaching them. And so it's really wonderful to hear from the front lines, this is what's happening and this is what's going on.
Awesome. I've got a question came in here that says, how do you grade success and do you measure them over time?
Oh, yes. So as a former college professor, I was at LSU for about 6 years. And I also taught at a middle school. So my beginnings was as an IT director, and then I taught all the middle schoolers. And I always knew I was doing a good job at 3 o'clock when the bell rang and nobody wanted to leave. But I was teaching things like video editing and photography and fun stuff like that, HTML and, that takes me back. Anyway, so most definitely what we want to be able to do is be able to customize everything to the specifications that the customers are asking for. And then what else was the question?
Well, how do we grade success and do it over?
Oh, great. Yeah. So yeah, squirrel. So I'm used to rubrics. And so one of the things that each facilitator gets is a rubric for every day and for every scenario. And what we ended up doing is using that rubric to grade both quantitatively and qualitatively. And so the customers that are coming to us year over year, and we do have some contracts that are signed where we've got 3 years over year. We can go back and look at their quote unquote team certification, if you will, and how they did. The only problem I see with that is churn. A lot in our industry leave, and then so the team isn't the same. So you're not really comparing apples to apples to apples. It's almost like apples to crayon apples to oranges, and then to a watermelon. So it really depends on the team, and if it's staying static over the next couple of years. The one that we're doing this summer, they were very specific in the scenarios that they wanted run, but they're going to also be more difficult. So it's I think having both the quantitative and qualitative and then recommendations at the very end are incredibly important. So it's not just a number,
Right.
and you're not just comparing that, but we're comparing the entire enterprise to itself.
Now, how about so after you've conducted initial engagement, how about setting up a cadence of regular engagements? You mentioned the one customer that wanted to set up 3 or 4 more
Right.
over time. Do you grade those when you come back? Do you say, okay, here's how you did a month ago, here's how we'll do, or a quarter ago, here's how we did in the second quarter,
Absolutely.
and look at it side by side?
For some of our customers, again, depending on the package that they've purchased, they actually will get a report at the very end, and it's usually built by me. And I take all of the rubrics and all the recommendations. We have our own communication offsite, from the range itself, where we're making notes, almost like little tickets of what we're seeing that's excellent and where we see, areas for improvement. And so I squish all that into a really healthy report that I can deliver to the customer at the end. And then what we can do is go back and look at that report. So I've had to do that for 2 customers in just this past, since January. And because they've done one the first year, and then they've come back for the second one. And then I'm looking forward to the one that I have to do that want 2 back to back coming up later this summer. So absolutely, we can most definitely say, yes, he took our advice. One of the things that I did notice, having watched red teamers in the past, is how many times that report just sits on the shelf and nobody makes any changes. And it's like, well, the same vulnerabilities are in your ecosystem and you hadn't changed your patch management. And, you still got these holes and, we still can't find machines that are beaconing on the network. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, sometimes it's frustrating to have that customer that just checks the box. I think anybody who is taking a threat space is being proactive. And I think a lot of our industry is reactive.
Yeah.
They're compliance driven and they check the box so that they're good. I've spent this much money, I'm good. And that's not what it's about. It's not about compliance and it's not about what should be happening. It's what is happening.
Right.
And that's what threat space is all about.
For those that are compliance, is it more driven by, we see boards getting more involved these days to say, I need you to do this and actually show kind of in a governance model,
Mhm.
the proactive of, maybe it's a regulated industry.
Well, some are moving that way. There are some overseas in APJ that there are some countries that are mandating now that there has to be some type of cyber range activity for you to do business with the government.
Mhm.
It's almost like your SOC 2 certification. You have to
Right.
actually practice what you preach. And yes, you've got a SIM, but you know how to use it. And so some of it is legislated, if again, depending on who your customer is.
Mhm.
But more and more, I'm seeing insurance. We see some people coming to us and say, for our insurance and for legal reasons, we have to have some type of cyber range activity. And then I take that report that I've delivered to their board of directors or to their CEO or their CISO, and then I share it with their legal department or their legal representation. Sometimes they have outside
Outside
representation.
counsel, yeah.
So
And you'd also talked about the rubrics and the full report. I know we can map a lot of the activities towards the MITRE framework and a lot of the scoring. Are there custom frameworks that you're using or that you create, or can you customize that based upon kind of that initial intake as well? Some of the other things that they need to look at in terms of the framework mapping.
absolutely, absolutely. And MITRE is one of my favorites, absolute favorites. The attack framework is amazing. And that is sometimes things that will step them through, especially looking for IOCs. And, as you know, Mandiant has our own attack life cycle. And so we give them all the toolkits. And again, in that exploratory conversation I have with the customer up front, that's where I want to talk to them about what is it that you are using? There's some people that come in and say, all I'm using is CMMI. Right now we think we're about a 1 to a 2, and then they come in the range and it's like, oh yeah, you're a solid 2. And there's some people that come in at a solid 4.5. And so again, with the variety of customers that we have come through this, I think that's what makes it so interesting is that we get to be flexible. I will tell you that there is nothing mundane about my job. Every customer is different. The verticals are different. The attacks are going to be different. The delivery is going to be different. The conversations are very different. Sometimes you've got some people that are very, very much linear focused.
Mhm.
There's some people that are there to have some fun. And it's really fun because, again, as an IT professional, it's my tribe. These are my people. We have the same language. We understand the same jokes. And so, we enjoy each other very much. And usually we're kind of geeky. So, when we throw out,
No, in cyber geeky.
yeah. So when we throw out the Tolkien jokes or the Star Wars jokes or we speak the same language.
So, question came in and says, "Does Mandiant's offering integrate SimSpace's skill wise into their offering for improving skill sets and team dynamics, team building?"
Well, one of the things that I think is extremely valuable about our relationship is how we bounce off of one another. So typically, what we do, and I would say for most customers that aren't DoD, this might be their absolute first exposure to SimSpace. And so on day one, we walk them through the entire platform. We show them the content that you have for training, as well as the cyber range itself. And it's incredibly impressive for somebody who's never seen anything like this before. There's some, cyber ranges where you get the individual VMs and then you do the threat hunting on a static machine.
Mhm.
And so what we like to do is, again, because we're so collaborative, is that after our engagements, we hand them over, their credentials, if you will. If they want extended access to the content, if they want access to that, absolutely. but that's on your end. That's not on Mandiant's end.
Yeah.
That's not
And we're
mine.
happy to talk to anybody about,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
their needs and
So
skills.
yeah, we make that offering. We give them the URL. I give them Craig's email address, and if you want extended access, the other thing is I usually give them extended access to the range. What's really kind of funny is at the very, very end, you know, a lot of us are type A. When that final debrief of the red teamer says, I did this here, this is what you found, this is what you missed, they want to go find what they missed. So we'll extend the range for like another 24 hours or so, because it's fun as the facilitator. I can see when they've come back into the range.
Right.
So they're back in there threat hunting again. What did I miss?
Well, and
And
that's one of the things that we love seeing and hearing is when, you know, we've had customers come to us from the engagement saying, I want to go into the offensive and defensive perspectives of some of the modules that we have in our training scenarios. So that if they really want to look and get that kind of graduate level detail into proxy logon or some of the emerging threats that have happened with, you know,
right.
Log4Shell, Log4j, or
Yeah.
PwnKit, or all the ones, they can see A, how it's weaponized, and B, how to defend against it. So you know, that's one of the advantages of working together. You can see kind of where your weaknesses are, and then go back and like train, refine, and learn how to think like the red teamer. Right?
That's the vulnerability management lifecycle. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that, yep, that was the last question that somebody had in there. My last question is, how do people find out about ThreatSpace?
Find me. All you have to do is find me. So one of the slides that I had shared with you, there is a URL if you want to put that in chat. I'm not sure where the chat is for me as a presenter, but you can Google Mandiant ThreatSpace and it will take you to the page. It'll take you to the video that you saw earlier. That's so cool. A friend of mine helped me with that. It's very, very fun. I think people walk away going, ooh, I want to do that again. It's almost like a roller coaster.
Right.
So most definitely. And my first name is spelled funny. So it's nadean.tanner@mandiant.com. And just reach out to me and I will respond back and we can talk about ThreatSpace all day long. That's my baby.
Awesome. Well, Nadine, thank you again for taking the time to talk with us. I really appreciated you being here. As well as the amazing discussion here. I will, if anybody has any questions about the Mandiant ThreatSpace cyber range experience, you can also email me, chris.michaels@simspace.com. I'll be happy to connect you guys together, or reach out to us at our success at simspace.com. So our customer success, Paul's team and you guys work so well together. So they'll be happy to get everyone connected. Again, thank you everybody for joining us for this Thursday ThreatCast. If you will be at RSA, both Mandiant and us will be on site there and at the Gartner Summit. So be sure to stop by both of our booths. We'll be happy to talk to you on site there. If you're not there, we'll be at InfoSec. We'll be at just about every other week. I think there's in the summer, there's some sort of event that we'll be at together. So be sure to find us. Yeah. And we will see you guys on our next ThreatCast. Till then, everybody take care.
Thank you.